Welcome back to Juba Forensics PLC, the YouTube channel. Today we're going to talk about, do you prosecute fraud when it occurs in your business, or do you just terminate the employee and move on and do something else instead? So the decision to prosecute fraud, the ACFE, which is the Association of Certified Forensic Examiners, they release a global study every year. The global study for 2024 highlighted that for business fraud, only 57% of the cases that they studied about 1,900 cases across the globe, about 57% of those cases were brought to law enforcement. Some of the reason those cases were not brought to law enforcement, the remaining 43% that were not taken to law enforcement, part of that was the businesses felt like what they did on their end was enough of a punishment. So usually terminating the employee was enough of a punishment that they didn't feel like getting local law enforcement involved. But the other side of that is a lot of those companies did not want the publicity. They did not want the media involved. They did not want people asking questions. So it's a double-edged sword here with, do you decide to prosecute or do you not decide to prosecute? Do you just terminate the employee and move on? I will say, from a forensic accountant perspective, my specific perspective, you may get other forensic accountants that say something different. I would love to see anyone that performs fraud, I would love to see them get prosecuted in some way, shape, or form, because what that does, if they are convicted, the ACFE found that 57% of the cases were brought to law enforcement, and then 72% of those cases, there was a conviction made against the perpetrator. So if the case is brought to law enforcement and then they go ahead and are convicted, it does go on their record in some way, shape, or form. So no, this does not help you get your money back necessarily. You're not going to, because you take it to law enforcement, get every penny back that they stole from you. But what you are trying to do is get it put on their record. So when they go to get another job somewhere else, when a background check is run, that will pull. And the future employers of these future companies will see that so-and-so has fraudulently stolen money from another business in the past. And maybe they choose not to hire that individual going forward. Or if they choose to hire that individual, put extra controls in place to try to protect themselves from that happening in the future. So me being a forensic accountant, I would love to see more cases that forensic accountants work on. I would love to see more cases brought to local law enforcement to be prosecuted so things can be put on records and it can maybe help stop fraud from reoccurring across the board, across all these different organizations. If someone gets away with fraud and the only thing that happens to them is they're fired, did they learn their lesson? Probably not. They're probably going to go to the next organization and do the same thing. And if they've done it to you and maybe they have had a long career, who knows how many other organizations they've done that to. And maybe the organization didn't even know that that was happening when the employee left. So many things. So I personally would love to see more cases brought to local law enforcement. But on the flip side of that, depending on the kind of business you run, depending on how big your business is, you may not want the media to know that an employee stole however much money it was from you in whatever way they stole it from you. Not only is that bad public perception, especially if you are a publicly traded company, your stock prices, I'm sure, will go down. I don't think there is a way around that. But on the flip side of that, if the employees, whether you're a small company or a big company, if the employees hear, oh, the person sitting next to you stole a bunch of money, here's how they did it, now they've lost faith in you as well as the business owner, business leader, whatever your position is in that organization. Well, why didn't you catch it? Why didn't you stop them sooner? Why didn't you insert all these other things? And how do we trust this won't happen again? And those are questions not only employees will have, but questions that outsiders will have. If you are a publicly traded company, your shareholders will have those questions too. And it can have a big snowball effect where not only is the person committing fraud, now they're going to definitely be fired, but maybe their manager gets fired. And then maybe that person's manager gets fired. And maybe a couple coworkers get fired because they can't trust who may or may not have been involved in this fraud scheme. So many different things that can happen when you choose to prosecute, because when you choose to prosecute, it's not guaranteed to be in the media, but it's likely to be in the media. Now, if you have a small company with 5 employees, you're probably not making it on Good Morning America because your front desk person was taking some cash. But that doesn't mean the local newspaper won't pick it up and start running stories and start coming to you and asking questions. So do you just fire that person and move on, or do you try to get it on their record? I will say 57% of cases is not a lot, but of those 57%, only 72 of them actually led to convictions. So yes, 72% is passing, like that's a C average, you know? But 72% is still not great. There's still 28% that, based on the case, committed fraud and nothing happened. Like you went through law enforcement, did the things, and nothing happened to them. So know that that is also a possibility as well, is that you prosecute this case and they still walk away scot-free even after all of that. And when you choose to prosecute a case, you most likely will have to pay some kind of fee, go to court, do all these things that maybe you feel like you don't have time for, you may not have the money for, depending on how much money this person has taken from you, especially knowing that you're not going to get all that money back, no matter what you do. Whether you file insurance claims and maybe there's some assets you can get back from that person that committed fraud, that fraudster, you most likely won't see everything from that. So let me step back again. So the question is, do you prosecute or do you not prosecute? For me personally, I talked about as the forensic accountant, but if I were the business owner and someone was stealing money from me specifically, I would look first at what is the dollar amount. Was that employee just taking a little extra cash and maybe wound up stealing $1,000 total? I don't think I would go through the struggle and drama of a big drawn out court case hoping to get a conviction. I would probably just terminate and move on, put better controls in place for myself, for my business, so it doesn't happen again. But if this person stole $50K, $100K, $250K, more than that, I would want some type of recourse. Just me personally, I would want it on their record, even if it costs me extra money to hire forensic accountants to come up with the total dollar amount. And if I need to hire lawyers, whatever it might be, I would try, if I can afford to, I would try to pay that money to get those people convicted. So that is if I were the business owner, it would depend on the dollar amount as to whether or not I would go ahead and try to prosecute. It's completely up to you though, if you choose to or choose not to prosecute in any kind of case like this. There are so many factors, like are you a publicly traded company, which I talked about. It also ties a little bit into what do you tell your staff? How much do you tell your staff? Whether or not you choose to prosecute, what do you do about it? After you found that fraud, after you know who did it, you know how they did it, you maybe know how much money they took, what's the next step? What do you do? Do you just fix the internal controls and don't tell anybody why? Or do you sit all your staff down and make them go through a training about here's what fraud looks like, here's why it's bad, here's who you say something to if you notice something like this happening? Those are all options. That might be a whole separate video that I go into, because today was supposed to be specific to, do you prosecute or do you not prosecute? And I want to come back to, that is a very personal decision with lots of things to consider: media coverage, messaging. How do you stay ahead of the messaging? Do you have the funds available to see it all the way through? and what are you hoping to get out of it? Because getting a conviction is not going to get you more money back from the fraudster. It just won't. But getting that conviction can help prevent them from doing that to someone else in the future. So lots of things to consider. I don't think there is a right or wrong answer, and I think that's why the number is 57%, because there is no right or wrong answer to that question. Do you prosecute or do you not prosecute? If you're unsure about prosecuting or not prosecuting, you most likely are going to hire a forensic accountant at some point. Do a quick consult with a forensic accountant. Forensic accountant might be able to point you in the right direction of what are the thresholds for it to be local law enforcement, state law enforcement, federal law enforcement. I will say a lawyer would help be able to guide you down civil versus criminal more than a forensic accountant would. But if you get a good forensic accountant, maybe they can give you a little advice from stuff that they've seen. So know who to talk to. I think the biggest players when you are considering prosecuting something like this, it's going to be law enforcement, lawyers, and a forensic accountant. If you want to have a team of 3, even if it's just consultations with the lawyer and forensic accountant, can't hurt just to have all the information with what your options are, what does that look like, what is it going to cost you? And then you sit down and look at, is it worth it in the end for you and your business? Hopefully this was helpful, and I will see you on the next video.